All righty, top of the morning to all of you. This is The Sweat, and for the next 90 minutes, you are stuck with us. Such an evil laugh.
Oh, man.
Jessie, Coffield, Emerson, Lotzia here, and our wonderful and knowledgeable fantasy football analysts.
Nothing I love as much as a captive audience. But as we do every Sunday, let's start by updating you on some injury news and notes. Packers wide receiver Devonta Adams is listed as questionable, but expected to play. As is 49ers running back Matt Breida.
All right, Ian Rappaport is reporting Dalvin Cook will be a no-go. The Chiefs are optimistic. Yes, Sammy Watkins will suit up against the Jags. Larry Fitzgerald, I feel like he lives on the injury report this season. He's expected to give it a go at San Francisco. Houston's Will Fuller. It's going to be a legit game-time decision.
And Detroit wide receiver Marvin Jones is on track to play and could be mega chalk play. But let's see what these guys have to say about it. Jeff Ulrich and Julian Edlow, good morning, you two. Now, if Jones plays, and considering his career success against the Packers, how big of a steal is he at 4,700, Jeff?
I mean, he's good value. I don't think he's must-play territory. I mean, I think people are forgetting that the market share of targets in Detroit is still really spread out this year. I mean, you can look back at historical performances, but all those historical performances for Marvin Jones before Kenny Golladay got there, he's eaten into snaps. He's eaten in majorly into target share. I think for tournaments, paying up for Kenny Golladay is actually a better play. Cash games, sure, 4,700. Marvin Jones, very good play. I think Golladay is a better play in tournaments.
Julian, when you're looking at Marvin Jones, I mean, are you worried about all that chalk?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff hit on the part that where Kenny Golladay being in the mix now, he's not quite as attractive as Marvin Jones once was when he averaged over 26 DraftKings points in his last 4 games against the Packers. That includes a game of over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. But when you factor in Jones's salary down $2,000 since week 1, he's down at 4,700. I will gladly eat the chalk here and roster some Marvin Jones.
All right, looks like Sammy Watkins is going to play. Patrick Mahomes will have his full arsenal of weapons against the Jaguars guys, but it's still the Jaguars defense. So would you steer clear of Sammy, Julian?
In terms of Watkins, yes. I'm not necessarily afraid of targeting the Chiefs' offense just because they're so cheap, even though the Jaguars' defense is good. But Watkins, with that injury at 4,800, I'm not really interested in targeting him.
Jeff, what do you think? What would you do with Sammy Watkins in this situation?
Yeah, I think he's a pretty easy steer clear this week. Not just the injury, but that game is also looking like potential monsoon right now. Thunderstorms all day.
True.
If there is stoppage, that's never really good for the offenses. So I don't know. I guess you could put him in like one lineup if you're making 100 or something like that. But not really a guy I'm looking to sort of switch over to. Again, it does come down to injury too. He's got such a bad injury history that he might not play the whole game.
Yeah, we're still, we'll update you on that one as we continue. But what does no Dalvin Cook do for the fantasy value of Latavius Murray, Jeff?
I'm not sure. I mean, it obviously boosts Murray's upside. I'm not sure how effective he's going to be anyways. We saw him in his spot start earlier in the year, flop against Buffalo. Now he's got one of the top run defenses in the league in Philly. This game just projects that Minnesota's going to have to pass the ball 50 times, which might be okay for Murray. I mean, he can certainly catch 5 or 6 passes. So he's a good value. It's just he's boom or bust. Like, I don't think you necessarily just plug him into a cash game lineup just because Cook's out.
What do you think, Julian? Is he going to be boom or bust?
Yeah, I'm not really into Murray. Like, even when he was in that home run spot against the Bills, he only managed 8 DK points. So we just haven't seen anything from Murray that would encourage us that he'll have a big day. So, like Jeff said about Watkins, if you're making multiple lineups, you want to try him in one, go for a GPP home run. It could happen, but Murray's not a guy that's really on my radar today.
He's just not expected to play right now, not confirmed that he will not be in there. But, guys, there are some other interesting reports out there. ESPN's Diana Rossini reporting Joe Mixon is not expected to have an every down role today against the Dolphins. Remember, Giovanni Bernard has already been ruled out for the next couple weeks. So what would you do with Mixon here, Jeff?
You could still play him. I mean, look, you go back to the start of the year, Joe Mixon didn't have an every down role with Gio Bernard there. He saw 60, 70% of the snaps. He still put up a huge game against Indianapolis, right? And this is almost as good a matchup against Miami, whose run defense really isn't that good, and they've had weak opponents to start the year. I'm not overly worried about it. Again, it might shift him into the like tournament only category where there's good value at that category. Maybe go down to David Johnson for a cash game play or something like that. But I don't think you necessarily need to cross Joe Mixon off. They're going to play him. It's not like he's going to get 5 snaps unless re-injury occurs. But this is a good matchup. Again, even if he plays 60% of the snaps, he's still capable of going off. I think you're going to see him get the majority of the carries still, just not every down.
Julian, what would you do? Go ahead.
I mean, the upside is definitely there on Mixon. We know that. We saw how heavily involved he was to start the season. But at almost $7,000, I don't feel like I need to be targeting a guy who's in his first game back from knee surgery. Like, his role could be pretty small if it comes down to it, even with Gio out. So there's just so many good running back plays on this slate. I know we're going to talk about most of them later. But Mixon's not really on my radar other than maybe a GPP lineup if you're making multiple lineups.
Rappaport is reporting Geronimo Allison, a Green Bay wide receiver, not expected to play. Here's an interesting, though, one, guys. ESPN's Josina Anderson reporting Devontae Freeman will be part of a 3-back committee with Coleman and Smith. So do you target any of these guys, or do you kind of just pivot off all three with the uncertainty here, Jeff?
No, you don't target any of them, and then you sit back and cry when Tevin Coleman finds the end zone 3 times today, because that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, seriously, Tevin Coleman was in the home run spot. He did nothing. Today he'll probably do something crazy, but you really can't target any of these players. A 3-down committee, and Coleman and Freeman are priced up. It's just too risky. I mean, if you really want to, again, maybe it's like a 1 in 100 thing, but I'm not even going to touch it.
All right, thanks, guys. We appreciate the time. We'll be back with you in just a little bit. Now we're going to welcome in a different panel right now, different football experts, Emerson.
Okay, so we have Steve Buchanan with us. We have Greg Ehrenberg with us right now. And gentlemen, we need to play some chase or fade here, please.
Yep, so you got to answer some of these pressing questions of the day. Steve, you must have at least 2 players from the Atlanta-Pittsburgh game in your lineup. Are you chasing or fading that?
I mean, honestly, I think you can make the case for both here. I mean, in cash, I think it's important to have a lot of exposure to this game. But in GPPs, I think that's a pretty good one that you can fade. I mean, this game is going to be heavily favored across the board, and for good reason. I mean, it has a huge total tonight. Juju Smith-Schuster has an excellent matchup. I think the best for the Steelers receivers here. I mean, he's facing either Desmond Trufant or Brian Poole in the slot. Those guys do exactly what the Falcons don't want them to do, and that's allow receptions when they're out there in coverage. Obviously, Ryan and Big Ben are in play here. But again, in GPPs, going away from these guys, I think can be a really good pivot play as well. You look at Phillip Rivers, Jared Goff, Cam Newton. All these guys are in great spots today, and you just don't hear the buzz for them because all of it is surrounding this game here. So cash, I think it's definitely important to have those guys in, but GPPs, I think you can have a legitimate case to fade that.
Garion Thorne also here with us. Can't believe you forgot Garion.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely
I didn't recognize in that sweatshirt.
Insane. I can't even believe it. Garion, man, I'm so sorry. Yeah, but this Falcons team just decimated by injuries. So do you think you have to have a couple of these guys in your lineup? Are you chasing or fading, Garion?
I'm kind of with Steve on this one. I think in theory this makes sense, but I'd be lying if I said I had 2 players from this game in every single GPP lineup I've constructed today. I mean, there is ways to get some value on your team, which is nice. And I think there are certain players way down on the board that might be viable in a GPP. I mean, I don't think Vance McDonald's going to be crazy contrarian just because of the numbers he's put up at tight end recently, but he's 3.7. Mohamed Sanu is probably the most forgotten receiver on this Atlanta Falcons team, considering the emergence of Calvin Ridley. But, like we were talking about with the Steelers struggling covering the slot, that's been a huge issue. Excuse me, the Falcons struggling. The Steelers have also struggled considerably to cover the slot. Mike Hilton probably not going to be in this game. That means Cam Hutton is going to be covering Sanu primarily. He's given up 2.15 yards per route covered this season. That's terrible. That's a huge number, and it was 6 for 6 quarterbacks were targeting Hutton last week. So I think Sanu's in a good spot, and even someone like Ryan Switzer. It's certainly a heavy GPP play, but this is one of the reasons I don't really like James Conner today. And that's another factor for why it's hard to get 2 guys into the lineup for this game is you don't really want to touch any of these running backs, in my opinion. So I think where Switzer is almost kind of stealing some of that running back receiving role from James Conner, that's really an area we've seen the Falcons just be completely eviscerated by so far this season. So I think there are ways to kind of be contrarian with this stack, but it is pretty top heavy and pretty high in ownership when you get to the well-known names.
Greg, you agree with these guys?
Yeah, let's make it 3 for 3 and kind of the same sentiments. In cash games, I think you load up on this game because there's going to be a lot of points scored. There's going to be a lot of yardage. So it makes sense for cash. For GPPs, though, you just don't have to target this game because most of the players are very expensive, like Garion said. And there's a decent chance that they're not going to hit value. And then in addition to that, there's just other places we could go. There's a lot of good plays on the slate.
Quick update, Geronimo Allison out, Devontae Parker down in Miami out as well today, guys, so do not roster them.
Yeah,
Patrick
noted.
Mahomes is going up against Jacksonville, that formidable Jags defense. Plus, we got some weather concerns in Kansas City. I guess it's just been dumping there all day. Is it enough, though, to trigger the fade on Mahomes here? Agree or disagree, Garion?
I mean, look, I don't want to say that these are the reasons I'm not playing Patrick Mahomes. Like, I'm not scared off by this Jacksonville defense necessarily. I just have trust in what Andy Reid is doing with that offense. But again, I just think there are places with less risk you can go for DraftKings. I mean, look, if we're playing season long and you have Patrick Mahomes, I think he's still a fine start. I think he's a low-end QB1, but that's not what you're looking for in a GPP. You're looking for ceiling. And I think while Mahomes could probably get 2, maybe even 3 touchdowns in this game, that's probably just not enough considering he's still priced above 6,000 and just some of the pristine spots that, Cam Newton, Jared Goff, even if we want to bring Ben Roethlisberger and Matt Ryan back into this, like there's just better, safer spots for quarterbacks. I mean, the Chiefs do have a very good offensive line by adjusted sack rate. They're top 10. They've allowed the fewest sacks in the league at 5. Like that stuff helps against Jacksonville. Their implied total is still 26, but I just feel like there are better places to go at this price point, so I won't have any Mahomes in my lineups.
Steve, how safe of a spot is this for Mahomes?
I mean, it's definitely not a safe spot. I mean, you look at the matchups he's had before, those have been much safer spots, and this Jaguars defense is good. But when we talk about the weather, it seems like it's a little over-exaggerated. I mean, the wind's going to top up at 7 miles an hour. There's hours where there's light rain falling. I mean, I don't have a certificate in weather, but to me, that doesn't seem to be too daunting there. I mean, but now we have a situation where he's going up against a top defense, and then the weather is concerning. You're going to get Mahomes at dirt cheap ownership here. I mean, not a cash game play, but you think about some of those large GPPs where there's 500,000 people, 600,000 people. Legitimately, Mahomes is probably going to be under 5% in those. So then with the production that he's seen, is it sustainable for every game? No. Is the Jaguars defense one of those ones that can kind of give him a shot of reality? Of course. But in the same sense, the production we have seen from him, getting Mahomes at really cheap, really low ownership, I mean, that's something you have to think about in those huge GPPs.
Meteorologist Steve Buchanan.
America's
Thank you.
not favorite local weatherman. Greg, what would you do here in the situation with Mahomes?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Steve, the weather tout. So here's the deal with the weather for this game. If you look at the historical totals for football games, what really impacts them is wind. Rain doesn't matter. The soggy field doesn't matter at all. What we're looking at is wind. So what Vegas has done with this game, the total hasn't moved at all because of the weather, because we're just expecting rain. It's not going to be windy. It shouldn't affect the offenses that much. Now, there is the concern of the matchup. The Jaguars have arguably the best defense in football, but still the Chiefs' offense and Mahomes have been priced down a little bit for the matchup. The upside is still there for him. If people are going to be scared off because of the weather, I definitely think that he makes sense as a low-owned GPP play. The upside for Mahomes is higher than any other quarterback in the league.
All right, finally, guys, David Johnson will score the most DK points per salary on the slate. Greg, he's 6,300, chase or fade.
Yeah, so I certainly think that Johnson is a fine play, but I'm fading the idea that he's going to score the most points per dollar of anybody on the slate. There's so many players in the NFL. I'm going to take the field versus David Johnson. It is nothing against him as a play today. I think that he's a great cash game play. He's a great GPP play. But to say that he's going to, without doubt, score the most points per dollar on the entire slate is a little bit crazy.
I mean, Steve, the 49ers have allowed the second most receptions to running backs this season.
I'm so sick of David Johnson. Like, what is this, week 5? Like,
Yeah.
I'm so tired of him. I mean, we just haven't seen that workload yet. I mean, he saw 9 targets in week 1. All right, cool. Back to normal. 10 in the last 3 weeks since then total. I mean, what are they doing here? I mean, his salary has fallen so low that I'm constructing my lineups, and then, okay, I need like a mid-tier flex play. Johnson's name keeps staying there and keeps staring me in the face. Like, I'm sick of looking at his name because I'm tempted to play him, but I just feel like it's just going to be a field of disappointment over and over in here. The 49ers are 5-point favorites here. So if they're going to rush, obviously that's not a spot for Johnson to be rushing. He's just not getting the targets here. So I'm going to fade this one. It's just still too much of a muddy situation right now. You have so much more solidified options that you can go to. Again, you'd rather be early to the party than late with Johnson. Maybe this is the week here, but it's just, I don't know. I just can't do it here. Johnson's just not an option for me right now.
Yeah, Garion, he hasn't looked like himself this season. Are you trying to be early to this party, or you're not in on this?
I'm just kind of confused as to what Steve wants from a running back in terms of him being the clear lead dog. I mean, this is a guy who had 25 touches last week, played 91.7% of the team snaps, and had 58.5% of the team touches. Those are huge numbers. I understand that we're talking about a Cardinals team that doesn't really have a whole lot other than David Johnson. So when you're pulling those totals from that team, it's not as high leverage as maybe like a Patriots player or a Falcons player or a Steelers player. But I kind of got to side with Greg on this one. Just like, this is like taking a golfer against the field. You just can't do it. So I'm going to fade him. But I do think David Johnson's in a perfectly viable spot. This is a good matchup. He is clearly the number one back on this team, and you don't often see running backs in this day and age getting 90% of the offensive snaps.
All right,
19 DK fantasy points last week.
That's not bad. That's not bad for your price.
Hot take, City!
Yep, we got the sweatometer going.
The sweatometer is going.
All right, I'm on Facebook taking questions. Jessie is on YouTube checking out your questions. So let's hit you with some of them here, boys. Christian McCaffrey or Melvin Gordon, Steve?
Man, I feel like you can't go wrong either way there. I think both are in really good spots, but I'll take the small the small salary saver with McCaffrey. But really, you can go either route here.
Okay.
Gary and Nick wants to know, can I trust Aaron Jones in cash games because low price and great spot, or risky because low carries / timeshare?
Yeah, I don't think he's a cash game play for me yet. I do think he's incredibly viable as a GPP play with just the efficiency he's shown in those limited number of touches. But yeah, this is not a cash game situation yet.
Greg, Sean Reynolds wants to know Baldwin or Breida?
Yeah, so this is Baldwin for me. I'm actually going to talk about Baldwin later in the show also.
Okay.
But Baldwin last week, he didn't have a monster fantasy game. I think it was 5 catches for 47 yards. But he's priced way down. The other thing that's also nice about Baldwin is there wasn't any restrictions for him coming back from the knee last week. He saw 7 targets. He was in on almost every single snap last week. So for his price, I think he's a really good play.
Let's see. We want to know Will Fuller or Calvin Ridley? Steve.
Well, Fuller, we still don't know if he's going to even be playing yet, so it has
If
to be
he's
Ridley by
playing.
default.
Okay, fine.
Okay, Garion, which combo do you like better, James Conner, Galladay, or Kareem Hunt and Thielen?
I would go Kareem Hunt and Thielen. Like I said, I'll talk about this later in the show. I don't like James Conner this week. I just don't like how I've seen the Steelers utilize that backfield over the last 3 games. And I like Thielen a lot. I think receivers up against the Eagles, where they kind of leave their cornerbacks on islands, tends to work out well for those high-quality receivers.
Greg, Amari Cooper or Corey Davis on a flex spot?
Neither.
Okay, neither. Who would you be targeting then?
Let me think. In that, I'd rather go to Doug Baldwin for a little bit cheaper.
All right.
Why wouldn't you go Davis? What's wrong with Davis?
Yeah.
Davis
Davis had a really good game last week, but it's still, if we look at overall what Davis has done for the entire amount of his career, like last week was the first time he ever scored a touchdown. It was the first time he had a really big game. And if I'm looking at him versus Doug Baldwin, just in terms of the quality of the players, like it's Baldwin to me for a cheaper price tag.
Garion, TJ Yeldon or Aaron Jones?
Oh, TJ Yeldon, 100%.
Steve, Marshawn Lynch or Adrian Peterson?
Ugh.
Ugh.
Don't really like either. I mean, I guess I'll go with Lynch, but I mean, I'm not really interested in either one.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go to our weather guy actually on this. Steve, Dylan would like to know, with rain in Kansas City, does this make a Bortles, Yeldon, Westbrook stack risky?
I don't mind that at all. I mean, obviously, without Fournette, Bortles is throwing a lot more. Westbrook's in a really good spot here. And if they end up being up high, Yeldon's going to get the carry. So I don't mind that at all.
Okay.
Christopher wants to know, Garion, can I trust Garcon this week? Can you?
No, you can't.
Never.
Do not trust Pierre Garcon. First and foremost, I think he's now I think he should have to register as a tight end because he can't run. And he's also probably going to drop Patrick Peterson, who has done Patrick Peterson things this season. Do not touch Pierre Garçon.
Okay, don't do it.
Greg, will Henry against the Bills today be a top 10 running back?
No, I don't think so. I still think that Deion Lewis is the go-to guy in that offense. And generally time split situations for DFS, I'd rather avoid them because there are a lot of guys we could go to, like David Johnson, or go up for a more expensive running back option who we know are going to get almost all of the carries and touches within the team's offense.
All right, thanks, guys. We got tons more to get to before kickoff, including an important update on today's inactives.
Pat Mayo here with an exciting new way to heat up your Sundays this football season. DraftKings has teamed up with Buffalo Wild Wings to bring you a fantasy experience like no other. Blazin Fantasy Football, a new free game only available inside Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Want to win free wings for a year, game tickets, Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards, or Blazin Rewards points? Here's how. Head to Buffalo Wild Wings, download the Blazin Rewards app, and join. Already a member? Not a problem. Just log in and fire up the app. Click or tap the Blazin Fantasy Football icon, join a contest, draft your lineup, and get ready to compete against rivals in all Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Blaze your way up the leaderboard by drafting who you think will be the top 8 players, including kickers. Best part? You've got a chance to really rack up the score with your Blazin pick. It's worth double points, so choose wisely. Don't just wing it. Draft your team in one of Sunday's 4 contests before each half of the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern games. Then, grab some wings, sit back, and watch your team light up the leaderboard. Come back every Sunday for new contests each week. DraftKings and Buffalo Wild Wings, the right stack for Sundays.
Let's refresh your memory on guys dealing with injuries. Devonta Adams, Matt Breida, Sammy Watkins, Larry Fitzgerald, and Marvin Jones are all on track to play today.
Geronimo Allison out, Devontae Parker out, Will Fuller status still up in the air, and we're unlikely to see Dalvin Cook suit up against the Eagles. Once those are updated and official, we will give you guys a heads up. So now that we've gotten you up to speed on those notables, let's hear from Pat Mayo on who his must-play quarterback is. Might even throw in a Slater-proof pick.
Pat Mayo here of the Pat Mayo Experience, talking QBs and my slate-approved pick for Week 5. Since Pittsburgh-Atlanta is the highest projected scoring game of the year so far, you may want to use one of those QBs. Ben's fine, but Matt Ryan has been way better, trailing only Patrick Mahomes in fantasy points this season. Basically, you take Matt Ryan, you avoid the steak, and just buy the cow of the Falcons offense. He's completing passes and chucking touchdowns to so many different people, it's tough to peg down one player to pair him with, so just take him by himself. Ryan's averaging almost 30 fantasy points per game so far, and the Steelers have given up almost 30 fantasy points over its last 3 games. Unless there's a hurricane in Pittsburgh, there's no reason to think that's going to change this week. He's my slate-approved pick for Week 5. Now, if you want to gamble and save some cash at the same time, target the QB with the worst pass defense, even if his name is Blake Bortles. It's not pretty, but it could be very effective.
All right, now let's toss it over to Brendan Glasheen with Adam Levitan and Reed Fowler for Papa John's Make Your Pick Week 5.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Brendan Glasheen along with DK Live's Adam Levitan and Reed Fowler. They're here to help you make your pick for DraftKings Team Pick'em, presented by Papa John's. Get 25% off any regular menu price orders by using the promo code DK25. We're targeting 3 games, guys, in Week 5 with interesting storylines. First up, Falcons visit the Steelers. This is going to sound kind of weird. Atlanta and Pittsburgh are both last-place teams in their divisions. So, Adam, which team is going to turn it around this week?
Yeah, I think we'll get a better look at home Big Ben this week. I mean, this Falcons defense, without Keanu Neal, without Ricardo Allen, without Deion Jones, they're just getting absolutely abused every week. And I think that the Steelers defense with Joe Hayden looking better last night will be able to do something, or at least do more than the Falcons defense can do. So I'll go ahead and stick with home Big Ben here and think that they get it turned around.
Reed, Pittsburgh or Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm actually going with the Falcons here. I think Levy hit it in terms of defenses. It should be a high-scoring game, should be a lot of stacks involved in DFS, but I'm taking the Falcons. Sort of the same sentiment. Pittsburgh is giving up, I think, 29 points per game, and when you look at that secondary with Morgan Burnett a little banged up, yeah, Joe Hayden is playing a little bit better, but you got Calvin Ridley, Austin Hooper is someone that we're thinking about because Pittsburgh cannot defend the tight end. I think the Falcons do come out. They should have won that game. I don't know why they left AJ Green wide open, but I'm thinking the Falcons here. And you look at James Conner, his stats are kind of going in the wrong direction as well. I think he bounces back a little bit, but still, I'm taking the Falcons here.
All right, next up, the Packers travel to Motown for an NFC North rivalry matchup with the Lions. Aaron Rodgers said his team was terrible on offense last week, despite a 22-0 victory against the Bills. Reed, does Green Bay come out with extra fire in Detroit?
Yeah, I agree with Rodgers. I mean, they should have put up a lot more than that. It's kind of pedestrian from Rodgers. But if you look at how Rodgers plays against Detroit, he's 13-3, right? He's got the third most touchdowns against Detroit as opposed to the other two. I think Minnesota is one of them. But still, if you look at what Rodgers is doing, and if you look at what that offense is, right, they're going to run the ball. I think a lot of times when you look at the Packers, they're just going to pass. But Detroit has a third-ranked passing defense, the 32nd ranked rushing defense. Look what Zeke did. That was the game plan from Dallas. Give it to Zeke, and they still couldn't stop him. So I'm taking Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers does pull this one out against Detroit.
Adam?
Yeah, no, I like Detroit here. And I think that the way you beat this Packers defense is with perimeter wide receivers. And the Lions absolutely have three awesome ones in Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, and Kenny Golladay. I don't really see any way for this Packers secondary to stop them. We all know that the Packers play far, far worse away from Lambeau. And yeah, Reed mentioned how you can beat the Lions by rushing the football, but the Packers have been inept at that for multiple years. And I know Aaron Jones is starting to get back in the mix here. I'm not confident Mike McCarthy is ready to commit to the run, commit to Aaron Jones and get it turned around. So I like the Lions here.
All right, and finally an AFC North clash. Bakers-Browns host the 3-1 Ravens. Mayfield and the Browns let one slip away in his first career start in Oakland last Sunday. Adam, do the Ravens take command of this division, or do the Browns hold serve at home?
No, I think that the dog pound makes a big difference here. Baker's first start for the dog pound. And man, I mean, Baker is awesome. There were so many drops yesterday that could have changed the game. A penalty call or a blown whistle on a fumble that also changed the game. I mean, Browns had so many different ways to win that game, and I think people would think about it differently if they had. Now they get to come home and have Baker kind of go through this Ravens defense, which is difficult to run against, which I think you can throw on. So like Baker here and like the Browns.
Reed, who are you leaning towards?
Yeah, same here. I mean, Cleveland really should have won that game. It's one of those games where you're probably gonna feel better in terms of, well, you never feel better after a loss, but a loss that's going to do more than a win in Oakland. So I do like Cleveland here. Levy's right. When you're going home, he did enough, right, to keep that starting job. And those interceptions weren't necessarily his fault. He's taking chances downfield. But when you have the third-ranked defense, I mean, you mentioned it, Glashin, at the top. We're talking about weird narratives. Cleveland has the third overall best defense, total defense. And when you can put pressure on Joe Flacco, he's not going to be able to throw downfield to Willie Snead, to John Brown, to some of these guys. So I do like Cleveland at home against Baltimore.
All right, guys, thanks a lot. That'll do it for this week's edition of Make Your Pick for DraftKings Team Pick'em, presented by Papa John's. For Reed and Adam, I'm Brendan. We'll talk to you next week.
Alrighty, we are back. So are Jeff and Julian. We want anchor picks from both of you, please. These are guys you will be building your rosters around. We know you guys have a few of them. So, Jeff, hit us with your first anchor, please.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Steph Diggs. It's a little bit against the grain, I guess. I think some people will be targeting the other Minnesota wide receiver, who's also a good play. But you look at this matchup, and I already mentioned that this should be a very high volume pass game for the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, the Eagles really good against the run, but Minnesota just has not been running the ball either. Now, Dalvin Cook is almost certain to miss this game or be highly, like less than 100%. And then you look at the matchups, and Steph Diggs over Jalen Mills is the matchups you dream of. Steph Diggs is so good, and Jalen Mills has been so bad, and the Eagles are giving up a ton of points to wide receiver position. I like Thielen, but I think Diggs is actually the higher upside spot in this game, and he's cheaper. So I'm going to get as much Steph Diggs, especially in tournaments. If you want to go Thielen cash games for the floor or whatever, that's fine. But I think Steph Diggs has a ton of upside this week.
I have a feeling Julian disagrees with you.
Well, I was ready to argue a little bit more with Jeff, and then he kind of redeemed himself there at the end. Diggs is a good play. He's in a good spot, but I am going with Adam Thielen here just because he is more safe. He is a better cash play, as Jeff mentioned. He's at $7,700, 56 targets through 4 games. That puts him on pace for a season record of targets. So it doesn't get much safer than that. He's topped 100 yards in every game. He's scored 27 or more DraftKings points 3 weeks in a row. So the Eagles ranking 25th against wide receivers. I think both Minnesota receivers are really good plays, but unlike Jeff, I will favor Thielen here.
All right.
Julian's going to be a soft millennial. Be safe. Eat avocado toast.
Oh, wow.
Drink his pumpkin spice latte.
Oh, man.
He
You
has
just
to
got
go. Tis
called
the
out.
season.
Yeah, he's got his Uggs on too, I bet, Jeff. All right.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
confirm.
Sure.
I can confirm.
Who's your second anchor pick, Julian? And I hope it's not Millennial Soft.
Well, I mean, Jeff kind
well.
of stole my other one here, so I'm going with Christian McCaffrey. It was a guy that Steve kind of talked about, Melvin Gordon versus Christian McCaffrey off the top of the show. I think they're both fantastic plays, but McCaffrey's $600 cheaper, and he got 30 touches in his last game, which was week 3. Panthers coming off the bye week, going up against a really bad Giants team, so you got Christian McCaffrey, you got fresh legs, you got a good matchup, you're going to get a big workload in this game. McCaffrey's a really safe play, Jeff. I know you don't like that, but I like playing guys that are safe, and Christian McCaffrey is exactly that this week.
Yeah, he does have a 27% target share, so that is a lot of usage right there. Jeff, what about you? Second anchor?
I'm getting accused of stealing stuff, too. This
Wow.
is going downhill fast for you, buddy. I'm going with Melvin Gordon. I get the upside with McCaffrey, and obviously he's a solid play this week. I mean, I'm not gonna joke around about it, but you look at Melvin Gordon, and it's just the game environment, too. I mean, the Chargers and the Raiders is the second highest game totals, 53 points, and it's actually a pretty close point spread. Melvin Gordon's on pace for over 130 targets in the pass game, plus he's averaging over 5 yards per carry. And then you look at the matchup against the Raiders, who are actually like a bottom 10 team in terms of yards allowed, DK points allowed to the running back position. If the Chargers get out in front, it's probably because Melvin Gordon is rushing for over 100 yards. If the Chargers fall behind, Melvin Gordon's probably going to see 10 plus targets. I just don't see a scenario where he doesn't get at least 20 points. Then if he starts falling into the end zone, I mean, you're talking about a massive game. So all things considered, I'd probably just pay up for Gordon. If you can fit Gordon and McCaffrey, and that's fine. It's probably maybe like the cash game play. But yeah, Melvin Gordon, definitely. You got to get some shares.
A quick update for you guys. According to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, Dalvin Cook will be inactive today. So
Yeah, no shocker.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
right? It'll be the Latavius Murray show
Killing me
once again, which
shocked.
is not a great show. I would not pay to see that show. What about a DST anchor here? Which one is a must-play in your opinion, Jeff?
I like the Bengals. I think people are just overlooking the spot a little bit, or maybe they're not. I don't know. But they're cheap. And then, you have a team that's at home that are over 6-point favorites. And yeah, people are going to look at the scorecard and be like, oh, the Bengals haven't done much the last 2 weeks. They've gone against tough teams. I mean, they had a shootout game against Atlanta. The first 2 weeks, they were solid. They put up 12 points on the road against the Colts. Now they're against a worse team at home, and they're getting Vontaze Burfict back. I think this is a really good spot for Cincinnati. And I think they have a good floor. I think their upside is good too. So 2,700, that's definitely a pick I want some exposure to.
What about you, Julian?
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a must play at defense this week. I've kind of felt better about all the previous weeks here. But while I think the Bengals are good, I think you can pay down $100, $2,600, and get the Jets at home here too, going up against the Broncos. The Broncos just aren't that good. Case Keenum has failed to throw a touchdown pass in 3 straight weeks. He hasn't tossed a touchdown since back in week 1. We saw how lethal this Jets defense can be in that opener against Detroit. They've been really solid ever since, even though they haven't gone off for another big game. So I just think the Broncos are really overrated. That offense is not very good, and they're coming East Coast on a short week. I don't like the Broncos at all, so give me the Jets defense.
All right, guys, we got some more questions rolling in here, so we're going to take some of these. Tevin Coleman or Devin Funchess? What do you think about that one, Jeff?
Oh, I know who he's going
I
with.
think avoid both of those players today.
Yeah. Yikes.
Avoid them both.
Definitely don't play Tevin Coleman. It's too much of a risk with 3 running backs. And Devin Funchess, I guess, has some touchdown upside, but again, it's not really a good matchup with Janoris Jenkins. I'd rather pay up to Amari Cooper personally.
Okay.
Julian, will Barkley have the most points for value?
No, Barkley will not have the most points for value.
Jesse Carson,
Melvin Gordon,
with you.
Christian McCaffrey, the guys Jeff and I just talked about. pay a little bit more money for them, and you will be looking much better.
Jeff, is there a better flex option than Derrick Henry for 4,400?
No, he's the best play on the entire slate.
Okay. Wow.
No, in all honesty, he's got some upside. Obviously, he's got to get the carries, but it's a good spot for him to kind of get going. I mean, he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. And, the Titans should win this game big. So I don't hate it. Obviously, he's got some huge risk associated with it because if they get behind or, Deion Lewis gets in there, he just doesn't have a role in the pass game. So take that into consideration. But the upside is certainly bigger with Henry than it has been in past weeks.
Julian, Steve Roth would like to know Yeldon or Mixon. You got to pick one.
Ooh, I got to go Yeldon here.
Yep.
Mixon, we don't know what this guy's going to look like in his first game back from knee surgery. Meanwhile, no Leonard Fournette. We got a high projected total there against the Chiefs. Give me Yeldon. Much safer play, as we've been talking about. Safe.
Jeff, Tony wants to know Stafford or Rodgers.
I go Stafford. Aaron Rodgers is kind of interesting. We're not quite sure of his health, though, and he's down some receivers. So I think Stafford's a really good play this week. He's going to be overlooked potentially big time. Good cash game play, too, in my opinion.
All right, thanks, guys. We're going to be back with your top stacks after this DK Fantasy Flash. It's that time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Taryn Azak. The winless Arizona Cardinals are taking on the 49ers today, and running back Matt Breida, he is expected to play according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. He was limited in practice all week after aggravating a preseason shoulder injury during Week 4's loss to the Chargers. Now, the Niners RB has averaged 99.6 yards per game from scrimmage through the first 4 weeks of the season and has shown the ability to make big plays. So Breida's 5,700 and ranks third in the league in rushing yards. He's facing a Cardinals D that has struggled against the run, and CJ Beathard is still under center for the 49ers in what could be a windy game in the Bay Area. So take a long look at Breida and see if the reward outweighs any risk. Welcome back, everybody. We promised you top stacks, and we almost always deliver on our promises. So here's Garion Thorne and Greg Ehrenberg. Guys, hit me with just your first top stack. Garion, we're going to start with you. Just one, please.
I like the Rams, and it's an obvious pick, but the nice thing about the Rams is you can get some differentiation within that stack because there's so many different viable options on this team. I mean, you could even go with the very basic, like Todd Gurley Rams DST stack. That's super in play today against the Seahawks. I just think that the nice thing about this stack specific to the Seahawks is how their cornerback set up. And Trey Flowers has just been picked on time after time after time so far this season. He's actually the second most targeted cornerback on a percentage basis. 25% of the routes he's covered have been targeted so far this season. So where a lot of people might take Goff, they might take Gurley, then they're going to try to save some money at wide receiver with Woods, with Kupp, because they're so much more inexpensive than Brandon Cooks, and they seem to be the ones who get the red zone targets, which is important. I feel like Cooks in that matchup with Trey Flowers is going to be a really, really, really good and safe play this week. So the Goff-Cooks matchup, and even if you want to throw in Woods or Kupp with that stack, I think that's somewhere I'm really going to be exploiting this weekend.
So Greg Garion giving us one with a lot of different options. What's your top stack?
Yeah, so I'm going to go on the opposite side of this game with Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin. And one of the main reasons for this is because I think the Rams are going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it handily. So if we look at how just the flow of the game is going to set up, I think the second half we're going to see a lot of prevent defense. We're going to see a lot of soft coverage, and it's going to be really easy for Russell Wilson to dump the ball off to Doug Baldwin somewhere in the slot or just soft coverage where he could pick up a lot of PPR points. Another thing, too, I talked about this earlier with Baldwin, is that even though he was coming back from the knee injury last week and didn't have a huge fantasy output, he was in on almost every single snap. He saw 7 targets. So at 5,000 for Doug Baldwin, who's somebody who historically usually see like 7,000 plus in that kind of price range, there's a lot of upside here.
Greg, so that was your contrarian stack?
Oh, I thought we were just doing one here. I thought we were short on. I thought we were running long on.
No, just
Greg.
your top stack, then your contrarian.
Okay.
But
do you want to just make something up?
Yeah.
And give us a top stack?
Yeah, I'll go to the other one then. So Garion has really been he's been saying bad things about James Conner today, and I'd be curious to hear like how he feels about Connor's usage in the passing game, because Connor is still a very capable pass catching back. So I think that Roethlisberger, James Conner, and maybe Antonio Brown, all three of them put together, there should be a ton of points scored in this game. 57.5 point over under for the DraftKings Sportsbook. And then if we look at the way to beat the Falcons defense, it's been with pass catching running backs. They allow more receptions and more receiving yards to running backs than any other team in the league over the last few years. And then also, if we look at Connor, a lot of usage in the red zone for him. He scored a ton of touchdowns this year. So I think there's a lot of upside for Connor, and I think there's more safety than what Garion is letting on.
Garion, would you like to react to that and then possibly add in your contrarian stack?
I mean, yeah, I won't give too much away. I do have to talk about James Conner a little bit later. But I just feel like where people look at this situation with running backs just having their way with the Atlanta secondary, that's all well and good. But you look at Connor's usage and his snap count, it's gone down every single week since week 1. And it's easy to say he's the lone pass-catching running back in this offense because that's technically true. But again, Ryan Switzer was lining up next to Ben Roethlisberger behind the line of scrimmage in that game against the Ravens. He saw 8 touches on his 21 snaps, and he was running back pass routes. And I mean, his ADOT was 2 on those 7 receptions. He's essentially a wide receiver playing running back for the Steelers right now. So I've got a little bit of issue with James Conner this week, but again, we'll get into that a little bit later. My sort of contrarian stack, let's talk about the Raiders. I mean, it's easy to say this is recency bias because they put up huge numbers last week, but if you really look into the numbers they were putting up the first 3 weeks of the season, like they came into last week's game against the Browns as one of just 6 teams in the NFL averaging 400 total yards of offense per game. They just couldn't get the ball into the end zone. And at some point, that's going to give itself up. And we saw that last week. This is a team that has proven they can move the football. And this is a game where there's going to be a lot of snaps. I mean, you look at the way these two offenses utilize their pace. The Chargers have the 4th fastest pace in neutral zone settings, and the Raiders have the fastest pace in the NFL, about 20 seconds between plays when they are trailing by more than 7 points. And I think that could definitely be the case in the second half. So we're talking about 70 to 75 offensive snaps for the Raiders, and it's pretty easy to see where these volume shares are going to go. I don't think Amari Cooper in that Casey Hayward matchup is going to see a whole lot of volume. So that leaves you Jordy Nelson and Jared Cook, the number 1 tight end in PPR fantasy right now. So I think it's a really easy stack in a high total game where people might rather go with the Chargers. I think it could be a good second half for the Raiders.
Guys, we got some questions pouring in here. So Greg, Shannon wants to know Dalton or Stafford?
So this is going to be Stafford for me. I think that this is a game against the Packers, who are a little beat up at wide receiver, that the Lions should have their way in this game, and I think this should be a good day for them. And I'm happy to overall just ruin the segment with my stacks and in general.
Greg, we love having you on the show because it's like we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know
true.
what you're going to do. You keep us on our toes, and we appreciate you for that.
Hey, Gary and Nelson Aguilar or Kenny Stills? Wayne German would like to know.
I don't normally like using any Dolphins receivers, but I think you'd have to go Stills here. The upside is just too great to ignore. I mean, Aguilar has the fewest yards per target of any receiver in the NFL. There's just no upside. Like, yes, he could catch 9 passes, but unless he does that, you're just not going to have any sort of value with him. So go Stills. Try to get the home run.
Greg, I want to do kind of a chase or fade with one of these. Chuck Dustin says, I think Bortles will outscore Mahomes this week. Chase or fade?
Yeah.
His name is Chuck Dustin?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a pretty cool name. All right, so I'm trying to figure out what I'm chasing or fading. What am I chasing or fading?
Julian's burner
do you
account.
agree or disagree that Bortles will outscore Mahomes this week?
Yeah, I think that Bortles is a really underrated fantasy asset in general. He was a top 10 quarterback last year. So I'm going to chase him outscoring Mahomes, I think, if I have the verbiage correct there. Mostly because Bortles adds a ton of value with his legs for fantasy. And then also the Chiefs' defense has just been terrible this year. As good as the offense has been, the defense has been almost equally as bad.
Hey, Gary, we got a lot of people who are asking about Chubbs. So I want to ask you here. I mean, like last week, I think he rushed 3 times, but 2 of them were for touchdowns. I think more than 100 yards. Like, do you think the Browns start giving him, a little more of an opportunity in the backfield? Is he worth rostering today, you think?
I don't think you can roster him. Like, look, I think we can obviously expect him to get more touches this week just because there's really not any other direction he can go. I mean, he only got 3 touches.
Yep.
Yes, he turned them into 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, but, Hugh Jackson has said they want to have him more involved in the script this week, but it's also a terrible matchup against Baltimore. Like, even if you think Nick Chubb is getting 10 carries this week, they're just not going to be high leverage, high efficiency carries. I mean, also the Browns, like if you think about his low usage rate, this is a team that's averaging the 2nd most plays per game in the NFL. So they have all this opportunity and they're still not giving anything to Nick Chubb. So I just don't like it. Until something happens to Hyde, like you really can't use Chubb.
Hey, Gregory wants to know, if you're between Diggs and Thielen, who do you roll with?
Yeah, so I always go towards Thielen. Coming into the year when I was drafting my yearly leagues, I had Thielen ahead of Diggs, and he's somebody who ended up with more exposure to. I still think of Thielen as the number 1 receiver in that offense. I just think he's the better player than Diggs. He generally gets more targets. So with about a similar price tag, I go towards Thielen, and nice name also, Gregory.
Yeah, great name. Chase that name all day. All right, thanks, crew. We appreciate your stacks on stacks. Now, take a little break.
Pat Mayo here with Sunday's Blazin game day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. At running back, take Alvin Kamara off the board for the Sunday slate may actually be a blessing in disguise with Mark Ingram returning. So let's keep rolling out the next closest sure thing, Melvin Gordon. He hasn't seen fewer than 17 touches in any game, is completely script-proof because of his role in the receiving game, and leads the league in targets inside the 10-yard line. And that includes every receiver. Oh, he's 3rd in touchdowns among running backs too. Plus, Chargers-Oakland is projected as the 2nd highest scoring game of the week, and the Raiders have the 5th worst rushing defense in the league. If all that math doesn't add up to you, consider this. Oakland runs the most plays per second when trailing by a touchdown or more. More plays on one side always leads to more plays on the other side. And the Chargers already are the 8th fastest team in pace when up by a score. Considering LA's almost a touchdown favorite, expect Gordon to creep close to a season-high 24 touches, or even more. At receiver, the time seems about right for Antonio Brown to have one of those vintage monster games. The emergence of Juju Smith-Schuster has hurt Brown's bottom line in terms of weekly ceiling, but let's not pretend like he's been bad. He's still 2nd in the league in targets. Juju's 3rd, but he already has 3 touchdown grabs too. Oh, and Atlanta's defense is hot garbage. They've given up at least 2 scores to wide receivers in each of its past 3 games. And since Atlanta-Pittsburgh is the highest projected scoring game of the year this far, you may want to use one of those QBs too. Ben's fine, but Matt Ryan, he's better, trailing only Pat Mahomes in fantasy points for the season. Basically, you take Matt Ryan, you avoid the steak, and just buy the cow of the Falcons' offense. He's completing passes and chucking touchdowns to so many different people, it's tough to peg down one player to pair him with. So just take him by himself. Ryan's averaging almost 30 points per game, and the Steelers have given up almost 30 points per game over their last 3. Those were your Blazin game day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.
What up, what up? It's the fight after the fight after the fight. It's put up your bukes time, and I'm not sure who is more excited about the segment, Steve Buchanan or Julian Edlow.
Time to find out. Steve, your first of 3 picks for today and their DK point projections, and I'm told Julian is ready to challenge you on every single one, so go ahead.
Yeah, good luck with that one this week. I'm going to start with Tyler Boyd, 20 DK fantasy points. Sure, his salary jumped $1,100 from last week, but he just still feels too cheap for the target share that he's getting with the Bengals. He's averaging 9 targets per game and had 15 last week against the Falcons. He faces a Dolphins team who overall has been great against opposing wide receivers, but one point that they haven't exactly hammered down is against players in the slot. The Dolphins have allowed 17 receptions on 33 targets for 233 yards and a score. That's where Boyd's going to be here today. So overall, while the matchup may not look good for him, I think individually this is a really great spot for Boyd, and I think he's going to go a little overlooked because of that Dolphins defense. Excuse me.
Yeah, Julian, he had 15 targets in week 4, so what do you think? 20 DK fantasy points for Tyler Boyd?
What do you think, Julian?
I think that I'm confused because this segment's just turning into Steve baiting me into trying to look like an idiot every week. Last week he gives Last week he gives me Sterling Shepard, who was about 70% owned. My mom was playing Sterling Shepard on that slate. And now he gives, Tyler Boyd, 20 DK points. He's scored over 20 DK points 3 weeks in a row. He averages 20 DK points on the season, and he's playing the Dolphins, and he's underpriced. He's going to go overlooked. Everybody's playing Tyler Boyd in cash. Like, give me something here. Put up your chalk. That's the new name of this segment. I'm fine with that. I love chalk. He's a great play. But, like, yes, we're playing Tyler Boyd.
Shots fired.
Pew, 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 pew. Steve, your second pick, please. I'm scared now.
Well, it's just funny because when Julian doesn't have a rebuttal, he just tries to go personal attack. So, I mean, that's just his defense. He doesn't have anything to say, so he just personally attacks.
That's a really low blow, Julian.
All you do.
All I do? You don't know me, Julian. We're just friends over the internet. All right, we're going to go with Marvin Jones for 17 DK fantasy points. I mean, it's just another option that's just too cheap today. And, like, Julian can roll his eyes all he wants, but the questionable tag was on there, and it just became official about an hour ago that he was going to play. A lot of lineups are already done, Julian. People aren't scared of Marvin Jones here. He's averaging just over 7 targets a game, and he's seeing a ton of targets in the red zone. 6 inside the 20, 4 inside the 10. For someone who's just $4,700, that's a viable touchdown option in what could be a high-scoring game today. So he feels like a no-brainer in this spot. You could make the case for Golden Tate here. He's been a monster target share, 11 a game right now, but he's only seeing 2 targets in the red zone. All his touchdowns have come beyond the red zone here, so he's just not getting the looks. But I think that's going to sustain? Probably not. But Jones is getting all the looks there, so I love him here. And now Julian's going to personally attack me, so here it comes.
Oh, man, Julian, you know what to do. Take it away. Marvin Jones, 17 DK fantasy.
Let me just get some of this chalk out of my mouth first. Of course, we're playing Marvin Jones for $4,700. He started the season at $6,700. He's down $2,000 since the season started, and he's playing the Packers. Everybody knows Marvin Jones crushes the Packers. Last 2 seasons, 4 games, he's averaging over 26 DraftKings points against the Packers. He had over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns a couple of years ago against the Packers. Yes, we're playing Marvin Jones. Like, what are we even talking about? He's going to be 65% owned in cash or something? Who knows?
Ooh. Dude, someone is cranky this morning.
Steve, you've got one more. Let's see if Julian thinks it's obvious or not.
Hey, for next week, Emerson, bring that dude a pumpkin latte. He's real cranky today. We need to get him up there. I like Austin Hooper for 13 DK fantasy points today. He's a dirt cheap option at tight end, only 3,000 in a great matchup. I mean, he's a very cheap way to grab exposure to a high-scoring matchup that we're all expecting here. Hooper has seen 4 targets inside the 20, 3 inside the 10, so he's definitely getting his red zone looks. And you really can't ask for a better scenario here, especially against a team that's been allowed the most DK fantasy points to opposing tight ends. That's what the Steelers have done right now. They're averaging 21.2 DK fantasy points, and that's to the Browns, the Chiefs, the Buccaneers, and the Ravens. Not exactly teams you go to grab their tight ends on a weekly basis. So I think Hooper can be a good play here today.
Not exactly a guy you would go to, Julian?
Yeah, well, I can't let Steve get away with just a clean segment here and agree with him on everything. Austin Hooper's a fine play. He's a cheap tight end, $3,000 in the highest projected game total on the slate. So, yeah, it makes sense, but I want to look at other places at tight end. I think Jared Cook is the best tight end play on the slate. You have to pay up for him.
It's chalky. Jared Cook's chalky. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I'm not pulling him out of the Hidden Jewels segment. If it's Hidden Jewels, you go elsewhere. But if we're talking chalk, Jared Cook. You want to play you want to stick in this game? I like Vance McDonald for $3,700. You want to get a little bit more contrarian? You've got Tyler Kroft, who's now the lead tight end for the Bengals with Tyler Eifert out. You've got other guys on here. Jesse James is another cheap option in that game. David Njoku looks good with Baker Mayfield going up against the Ravens. I think Hooper's just as good a play as all these guys, but Hooper doesn't necessarily stand out to me. So to answer the question, under 13 DK points for Austin Hooper, because I have to disagree with Steve on something.
All right, guys, let's hit some questions here. Roy Edner would like to know, you like Cam at home against the Giants or Goff at the Seahawks?
I think upside-wise, Goff has a better upside there, but obviously Newton is in a really good spot too. I think Newton's going to be the lowest owned of the two for sure, but you can't go wrong either way, honestly.
Julian, do you agree?
Yeah, I like them both. Goff, I mean, look at what we saw. We just saw whatever it was, 465, 485 yards and 5 touchdowns from him. So the way that Rams offense looks, that's the higher ceiling. Cam, a really good safe play against the Giants at home as well.
Steve, full point PPR, Royce Freeman or Aaron Jones? about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really like it. Honestly, if you're going PPR, I feel like Montgomery actually might be an option there. He's a little bit cheaper too, and he was getting a decent amount of targets last week. So if you have the money, I feel like Montgomery could be an option there instead.
Go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
Do you want me to follow up? Do you need a second to find another
Go
question?
ahead. I just
I'll
have
go ahead.
phenomenal questions.
Julian, $3,600 left. Need a tight end. Any suggestions?
Austin Hooper's a really good option. Oh, sorry. That was Julian's.
Austin Hooper could fit there. It's a tough price point. I'm just looking down at it right now. Vance McDonald's $3,700. I would say go there. And then when you get below there, yeah, I would try and go in the $3,000, $2,900 range and then open up some salary elsewhere unless you can find $100 for Vance McDonald.
Gives an answer for he can't afford it. That makes sense. Just go Austin Hooper. Why do you got to be difficult?
Well, okay, so it's $3,000. This guy just asked for $3,600. So now you have $600 left over. Now you got to do some roster reconstruction.
No, you don't.
All right, ladies, hold on. We have one more question.
Steve would leave $600 in salary on the table. That's probably how he rolls.
I'll leave $2,000.
Wow.
Okay. One more question before we say peace out to you dudes. Aiden Strachatorian, who says, I am his favorite host, calling you both great analysts, is asking, should I start Jordy Nelson or Mohamed Sanu? Thanks, man. Really helps.
I'm going to go Sanu on that one.
Julian.
Jordy Nelson, easy.
Okay, well, if he's watching, he is torn right now.
I'd just like to say that I don't see anything that says you're his favorite host.
Yeah, no, I just kind of assumed that.
I saw that I was his favorite analyst.
Wow. All right,
he
guys.
loves the hidden
We're all
jewels
seeing
block,
what we
it
want
looks
to see. All right.
All right, guys, that'll do for now. Garion's top 3 fades of the afternoon are coming your way next. Hey, welcome to $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com. I'm Adam Kaufman. Time to cash in Week 5. We are identifying players with the most upside for Sunday's main slate. Reed Fowler and Adam Levitan are here, our $1 Million panel. And Reed, you could start. Who can have a $1 million impact this weekend, you think?
Yeah, I'm going up top to Christian McCaffrey at $8,000. He goes up against the Giants team, top 10 in giving up DK fantasy points to opposing running backs. And you see Christian McCaffrey, he's seeing 28 attempts week 3, and you see Kamara last week getting 19 attempts. So that positive game script is there for Christian McCaffrey. Second one is actually TJ Yeldon's backup, who's Corey Grant. This is a positive game script again. And when you have time to prepare, going against a Kansas City run defense that's really given up a lot of fantasy production to the running back position, you're going to see a 60-40 split, in my opinion, in snap count. And Corey Grant gives you that upside, lower floor, but gives you that upside against Kansas City's bad run defense.
Yeah, and we know with Leonard Fournette out that Jackson was going to skew pass heavy. They've done that repeatedly, and Corey Grant is certainly an explosive player in the pass game. I'm going to start with Matthew Stafford, and the way that you beat this Green Bay Packers defense is through the air, vertically. Then that's exactly where Detroit wins also with Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, Golden Tate. So I think Matthew Stafford at a cheap price is underrated to have a really big game here. Lions continue to be among the league leaders in pass attempts every year. And the other one I'm going to look at is James Conner. And I know it's been slow going for James Conner the last couple weeks, but man, this matchup at home against Atlanta is so perfect. No middle linebacker, no starting middle linebacker is hurt. Starting free safety is hurt. Starting strong safety are all hurt for the Falcons after James Conner catches these passes over the middle from Ben Roethlisberger. There's just no one there to tackle him. So those would be my 2 picks this week.
Till Lev Bell comes back for his job. All right, guys, thanks to our $1 Million panel. Enjoy the games, and we will see you next week on $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED Meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com. All right, who's sipping on that haterade this morning? Garion Thorne. That's who. It's time for Thorne on my side. The 3. Wow, I didn't know we had an
Wow. Nobody told us about that animation. Felt really cool to watch.
Interesting. So 2 out of
Very
our 3 current panelists have an open.
Wow.
What a loser.
I just sit here and rip everybody apart. That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
That didn't make you a Terrence and Phillips style Canadian.
So if you couldn't tell by the graphic, guys, this is Thorne on my side. The 3 players Garion hates the most. His 3 biggest fades of the day, with Steve and Julian here to chime in on each pick.
So, Garion, who is your first Thorne?
Well, people have been on the edge of their seat this entire show.
Yes.
Trying to find out why I hate James Conner. So let's get into it. I just think this is a spot that you shouldn't be attacking, considering the other running backs around him. I mean, if you want a backup running back who is now the starter in a great matchup, just saved $2,000 with TJ Yeldon. Like, Connor's numbers have all been going in the wrong direction. His usage has been down since week 1. His snap count went below 80% for the first time all season. With a snap count like that, he is no longer just Le'Veon Bell's role. This is a completely different scenario. He is not being used like Bell was used anymore. I mean, you go back the last 3 weeks, from week 2 to week 4, he's only averaging 0.29 fantasy points per opportunity. That's less than Frank Gore. That's less than LaShawn McCoy. And a big reason for that is just he doesn't have any opportunities either. Like, the Steelers have been throwing the ball over 3/4 of their snaps the last 3 weeks, 76.5% pass ratio. And then there's this myth that James Conner is like hyper utilized in the red zone. He's not. He has 6 red zone carries so far this season. You know who has more red zone carries? Both Denver running backs. This isn't some amalgamation of, Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay combined have more carries. No, they both just have more red zone carries than James Conner at this point. I could see him scoring a touchdown in this game, fine. He's going to cobble together 15 or 16 DK points. He is not reaching value in this game. Everything is trending in the wrong direction, and Ryan Switzer is stealing his job very slowly.
Hey, Steve, I bet you've got some stuff to say about that.
Oh, I love it. The hate from Garion is real. He gets a little animation, and he's just all fired up. But, I mean, I agree with him completely. I have zero Connor this week. I mean, he said it since week 1. It's just been going downhill for Connor since. I mean, take out that monster performance against the Browns. He's averaging 14.4 DK fantasy points in the past 3 weeks. And he also mentioned that the snaps have dropped dramatically. They have. Since week 1, 72, 56, 49. That's a downward trend. You don't want to pay for someone who's 7,500. And you can say the saving grace, he gets targeted in the passing game. How about $500 more and just take Christian McCaffrey and be done with it? Why wouldn't you just do that? Connor is just way too expensive. The production is going down. Julian's probably going to like him. So, yeah, well, go ahead. Let's hear that one.
Julian, do you like him?
Yeah, I do.
Well, first of all, thank God we have another reasonable human being on this segment. It's good to have you here, Garion. But here, I'll argue against these guys as to why you could play James Conner. The Falcons allow the most receptions to the running back position, and there are 57 projected points in this game. So I do think that James Conner is a good play. If this slate were a little bit tighter, maybe I would be playing James Conner. More than fading him as a bad play, I'm fading that there's better value here. You can go up to Melvin Gordon at 86. You can go to Christian McCaffrey at 8,000. You can go down to David Johnson at 6,300, who I heard Steve hates earlier in the show. Yeah, who wants a guy for $6,300 who got 25 touches and 19 DraftKings points last week? Niners. David Johnson's a fantastic play. So, yeah, there's just too many other good running back plays to say James Conner's a home run. But I do think James Conner can have a good game with those receptions.
All right. Wow. Well.
That was a good first thorn.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Garion. Let's hear your second.
Let's stay in the same tier at running back. Joe Mixon. Jeff put up a reasonable argument for why you would play Joe Mixon. I get it, but at the same time, I'm not generally one susceptible to coach speak. I think we can put too much emphasis on something that they flippantly say on a Friday. Like when the rubber hits the road and they need to win this game, Joe Mixon is probably going to be on the field a lot more than they think he's going to be. But, like we talked about with James Conner, if you go up $500, there's just so much more safety. You can go down $2,000 or 1.5 and find David Johnson with so much more safety. And I think an underlying thing that people aren't talking about, I understand the Dolphins' run defense has been terrible across the last 2 weeks. That coincides with Rashad Jones not playing. Rashad Jones is one of the best run-heavy defense safeties in the NFL. He is active for this game. That is going to help the Dolphins' run defense. I just think Mixon is not a spot you want to attack here.
Wow, no Joe Mixon. What do you think of this one, Julian?
Yeah, I think Garion's spot on here.
Wow.
Why are we going to pay $6,900 for a guy who's playing in his first game after he had a knee procedure? We've been talking about how many good running back plays there are here. I'll say this. I like James Conner a lot more than I like Mixon, but David Johnson at 6,300 is a way better play. You got TJ Yeldon in a good spot. There's so many running back plays. Why are we going to risk playing a guy in his first game back from a knee procedure when we've heard that he's going to be limited in this game?
Well, what do you think about this one, Steve? I know that you want to fight Julian, so.
I can't fight Julian all the time, but
Okay.
I mean, this is Garion's segment, so I'm just going to agree with Garion and just ignore what Julian said. I mean, the
Come
thing
on,
here is
you
that
gotta go against me. Just like put up your bukes. You got to take the other side.
quiet.
I'll just back away. You guys do
Calm
your
down.
thing.
Calm down, Julian. The thing with Mixon is just he's too expensive. Like this would be an easier decision if he was 5,900 and not 6,900. I mean, you just go up a little bit more, and the running back field is just so full of players that I'd rather play here. And then when Gio was running all the plays here, it was pretty much just Gio. There was no talk of really anybody else coming in there and taking more of the snaps. I mean, I'm not afraid of Walton coming in and vulturing a bunch of these carries, but he's a body that's there right now. I don't know how much they want to run Mixon in this spot here. 6,900 is just too expensive for me to take a chance when there's so many good value and upper tier options you can choose from.
Wow. All right, Steve. I really thought you were going to fight Julian on that one. Anyway, let's get your final thorn, Garion.
Well, I'm going to go a little against the actual point of this segment right now and just give an obvious person to not play. But I wanted to take a second. If we could get like some harps kind of swelling in the background, let's talk in memoriam. I'm really going to miss Demaryius Thomas. It's sad that he's just dead now from a fantasy perspective.
Rest in peace, Demaryius.
R.I.P. in peace.
Like it's over. There is no scenario where I can see myself getting excited to play Demaryius Thomas for the rest of the season. And it's not even just his own personal performance. I mentioned earlier, Nelson Aguilar is averaging the fewest yards per target of any receiver in the NFL. Demaryius Thomas is just ahead of him. 1/10 of a yard ahead of him at 5.1 yards per target. That's atrocious. And the Denver offense has systematically changed in 2018. This is no longer a team that funnels all their targets to their top two wide receivers like we've seen the past 3 seasons. I mean, Cortland Sutton is on pace for about 85 targets this season. You go back to even just last year. Benny Fowler played in all 16 games and still somehow managed to not even get 60 targets. Jeff Horman was targeted 7 times on primetime Monday Night Football. There's just nothing. There's nothing left. There's no reasonable argument to play Demaryius. So rest in peace, my man. I'm going to miss you.
Julian, is Demaryius Thomas also dead in terms of fantasy for you?
I mean, I think we were all watching Monday Night Football against the Chiefs when Demaryius Thomas was wide open for the game-winning touchdown, and the ball just sailed over his head from Case Keenum, who I mentioned earlier in the show hasn't thrown a touchdown since week 1. I love the Jets' defense on this slate, so I'm certainly not playing Demaryius Thomas. He's done. He is no longer a viable fantasy option. So I'll take the rest of my time to highlight Steve saying that he would like Joe Mixon if he's $1,000 cheaper. He's interested in playing people if they're $1,000 cheaper. Of course, everybody's a better play if they're $1,000 cheaper.
Oh, wow.
He's got a point there. He's got a point.
What a stupid argument. Like, talk about Demaryius.
You guys are making great brothers.
Anyways, if you're going to play a Broncos receiver, I mean, it has to be Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, DT is just not – I don't want to say he's dead. I mean, that's a little morbid, but I mean – yeah, he's definitely not an option
Steve.
right now. I mean, Sanders going up against Lester Screen, who is just not a daunting matchup at all. He's been targeted against 21 times, allowed 16 receptions, 206 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, Thomas's matchup isn't terrible, but I mean, just like Keenum just can't get to him at all, and Thomas just looks like he's lost on the field. Like, we have a lost child on the field. Somebody help this guy. Like, that's what Thomas just looks like at this point. And then he's averaging 8 targets a game. He's only averaging 10.7 DK fantasy points on the year. That's a problem. Yeah. You're getting your opportunities, but you're just doing absolutely nothing with them. So clean sleep for Garion. Great segment here. We'll go to Julian's. Oh, that's right. He doesn't have one.
Oh.
I do love how you said death was too morbid, but then you just made up an Amber Alert scenario.
Yeah, death is really morbid, but lost children, that's fine. We're cool with that.
Amber Alert, they usually find the kid, so it ends up being okay.
All right, well.
All right, this is getting super deep right now.
Quick, go to commercial.
Yeah, right? Cut. We are going to bring you a very special conversation right now between Adam Kaufman and the one, the only, Mike Francesa.
Mike, it's a fun slate today, but the most interesting game, it's Patrick Mahomes and the undefeated Chiefs against the 3-1 Jaguars and that great defense. Is this the day that someone finally figures out Mahomes?
Maybe. I think they'll slow him down. I don't know about figure him out. The league is conducive to being able to move the ball. It's very hard for any defense to shut down a good offense. And this is a perfect combination there. You have a combination of a kid with tremendous amount of physical talent. Plus you have a lightning wide receiver, a couple of good secondary receivers, a incredible tight end, and a very good back. When you add all that in with a great quarterback and a proficient play caller, that's a lot. To come from 10 back in the fourth quarter in Denver is like coming from 20 back somewhere else. That's not an easy place to play. And, they play legitimate defense. This is the best defense in the league. It is very good on all three levels. Here's what I'll say, though. I have not seen Mahomes take a serious hit yet. He is not a big man. I could see somebody really laying the wood to him, and I want to see when he recovers from that.
Steelers-Falcons, the big story surrounding Pittsburgh, though, it's a guy you're not fond of, Le'Veon Bell. He reportedly plans to return during the Week 7 bye to get ready for Week 8.
The Steeler problems run deeper than him, though. Their problems run to their coaching staff. They've never replaced their defensive coordinator. I think that the coach and the quarterback are halfway out the door. And I think it shows. I think halfway in Roethlisberger's heart, he's on to the rest of his life. And he's had a great career. And I loved Tomlin when he came in the league. But to me, Tomlin's been mailing it in for a couple of years. I just think that team has too much talent to play the way they play. They play putrid football. Now, Atlanta has been the worst coach team I've seen in recent years because they had an abundance of talent. They should have won a Super Bowl, and they are now the masters of losing on the last play of the game. I mean, they have perfected losing on the last play of the game. So, I mean, they have turned it into an art form. They have now turned losing into a complete art form. We'll score 30, and we'll figure out how to lose it in the final seconds. Either we won't be able to hit Julio Jones in the end zone, or we'll give up a touchdown in the final seconds to lose. Yeah. So they have really turned that in. That team with a losing record is false. It really is.
How about the Giants? They're 29th in the league, Mike, in scoring. Is Eli the problem?
I don't think so, and the Houston game will show you that. But I wonder if it's getting to Eli in this way. Is he starting, because he has no confidence in the offensive line, just to check down so quickly? I thought there were a couple of times on Sunday where he had Beckham on a corner, and he checked down. And I think that's where Beckham got upset. I think that happens sometimes with quarterbacks, especially older quarterbacks, because they want to be protective of the ball and themselves. This is a talented offense that has been completely destroyed by an offensive line. And now you've seen the quarterback maybe be affected by the offensive line. Add that all up, and they've had very little running game. Whatever Barkley's gotten, he's gotten on his own. And they've had no downfield passing game. It's really, here's the bottom line. They win 2 of their next 3, and it's Carolina, Eagles, Atlanta. If they don't, I think this season's over.
Time to dig deep, time to go off the wall and see who Jeff Ulrich and Greg Ehrenberg are reaching for on this beautiful Sunday.
So, Jeff, with the G, the first player you think is worth taking a flyer on is who, my friend?
I'm going to buy a vowel today. I'm going to go with Nick Vanett-White, starting tight end of the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks tight ends have averaged 7 targets per game. Those targets have all been shared by Nick Vanett and Will Dissly. Will Dissly is now out. Oh, by the way, the Rams have also allowed the 3rd most receptions to the tight end position in the league through 4 weeks. I like this guy at 2,500. He's probably going to get at least 5 or 6 targets. Very good chance he could hit 4 or 5 times value here. So I think Nick Vanett at the absolute minimum is in play this week.
You know, Jeff, I saw you tweet this the other day, so if you follow Jeff on Twitter, you might get this information a little earlier, just saying. Greg, I hope you've been paying attention and you know what you're supposed to do this segment. So right now, I just need you to give us one player you're reaching for.
Yeah, well, first off, I have to say big props to Buchanan and Julian, who have come out on just fire this morning and are definitely correcting some of my wrongs to bring up the show in general.
I will say this too, like Julian is playing injured right now. He's hungover.
Yeah.
Oh my!
Allegedly.
Even more impressive. This is like the Michael Jordan flu game. This is
huge.
This is an all-time Hall of Fame moment on the sweat. For me, I'm going to go with Kenyon Drake here. And if we're just looking for off-the-wall picks, if I'm trying to find somebody who's cheap that I also think has a lot of upside, and Drake has not been utilized properly at all this year. Frank Gore's been getting a lot of play. He's been getting a lot of touches, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. The Dolphins really struggled last week, and Gore got extra playing time, so I'm hoping that they go back to Drake here. He was so good at the end of last season. He was averaging almost 20 DraftKings points per game over the final 5 games of the year. So 4,700, he's worth taking a flyer on the GPP in case that maybe they say, hey, our offense is struggling a little bit right now. Let's go to probably the most talented player on our offense to try to get us going a little bit. And he has a lot of upside.
Greg, you just did so well on that one. We're gonna get another one from
again.
you. So who else is worth reaching for?
That's very nice. I feel like this is it's like getting gold stars when you're in elementary
you're
school.
earning our trust back. All right.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go with Jeff Heuerman here. So there aren't that many tight end plays that I've really liked this week. I think it's a pretty thin position. So I'm going to look pretty cheap to try to punt because I think that's it's a place that really makes sense to save salary. If you look at Heuerman, Jake Butt is out for the year with a torn ACL. Last week, Heuerman started in his place and was really a much bigger role in the passing game than I think we would have expected. He saw 7 targets, finished with 4 catches for 57 yards. I think that he makes a lot of sense to save salary with. I think both him and Vanett are really good cheap tight end options.
Jeff, we also trust you, so can we get your second off-the-wall pick?
Yeah, my second off-the-wall pick is, who is it? Oh, it's Ty Montgomery. Sir Ty Montgomery the third. Look, I was waiting for the Geronimo Allison news. The Packers did talk up Montgomery a little bit. They said they're probably going to try and work him out a little bit more out wide if the situation arises. And I think the situation has arisen. Everyone's talking about Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I just do not trust rookie wide receivers with Aaron Rodgers. He's got his guys that he likes to go to, and we know Ty Montgomery is one of those players. I think there's a very good chance he could see 40-50% of the snaps, which would be a big boost to what he had been doing. And just the game flow, the game type of environment here. I think Detroit's going to be able to pass on the Packers. They're going to be able to put up points. Packers are down some cornerbacks in the secondary. I think this is going to be a pass-happy game. Lots of offense on both sides. I think Ty Montgomery could easily fit in, especially if the Packers have to go like quick huddle or no huddle in the final moments.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned Geronimo Allison. For anyone at home who hasn't been paying attention, he is out today. He will not be playing. So thanks for going off the wall, boys. But please hang tight because right now we're going quad box. Let's bring in
quad box.
The 2 best friends that anyone can have. Let's add Julian and Steve right now to this segment. And guys, we are working up a sweat. So we have the 9-minute warning right now, minutes away from lineups locking. So what maybe last minute advice do you guys have here? Maybe someone you're pivoting off of after all the injury updates and weather updates and all that jazz? Steve?
Yeah, I mean, like I was mentioned earlier, how the weather, seemed to be really poor up in Jacksonville with the Kansas game and Jacksonville game. Really doesn't look like it's going to be that bad. So if you're looking in those large GPPs, I think that's a good game to target. I mean, I feel like it's just going to be low owned across the board, receive bad matchup for like Mahomes and company. But really, this is a game where I think could have end up having a lot of upside in a game that's not going to be targeted very highly. So if you're playing in those monster GPPs here today, take a look at that game.
Do you want to ask Julian?
Hey, Julian.
Well, I don't know what football game Steve thinks is happening in Kansas today, but I'm sure he can go ahead and target that game and have a really nice day. But for me, I think my developing take here is that there's not all that much to adjust to. You can kind of trust your gut from your lineups that you built earlier this week. Obviously, Geronimo Allison, that's a guy you want to get out. So maybe you get a little bit more exposure to these other weapons in the Packers offense. But for the most part, the plays that were good plays on Friday are still good plays on Sunday. And that makes it kind of easy to stick with some of your lineups and feel good about them.
Jeff, what do you think? Any advice for people at home?
I mean, the one development is that the Packers' top cornerback is out, Jaire Alexander. So it's just going to make their secondary weaker. I still like paying up to Kenny Golladay in tournaments over Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones, you can play him in cash, that's fine. I think Golladay is going to be the under-owned play. The other player no one has talked about this week is Brandon Cooks. I just wanted to mention his name because he's got a terrific matchup against one of the worst cornerbacks in the league in Trey Flowers, according to Pro Football Focus. So you're looking for like a late tournament guy with upside. Brandon Cooks is probably going to be like 5% owned.
Greg, any advice for the people at home? Anyone you're pivoting off of? Anything like that?
Well, earlier in the week, I was pretty high on Joe Mixon, and I'm definitely lower on him now that it looks like that he could have some of his snaps reduced. In terms of like a personal wish list, I would like nothing more than Demaryius Thomas to have a 100-plus yard receiving game this week. That would be the greatest thing that I think could possibly happen. One other thing, I think that in terms of a game stack, I love the Seahawks-Rams game today. I really think the Rams can get out ahead, and then the really cheap Seahawks passing game. We've talked about Russell Wilson today, Doug Baldwin, Nick Vanett. I think all of these guys could really see a lot of points in like a come-from-behind situation against the prevent defense.
Wilson, Baldwin, Vanett. There's your winning stack.
Ooh.
Throw Brandon Cooks
Yeah,
in
that
there
was
too.
Greg's
Yeah, for
contrarian
sure.
stack. Greg's contrarian
We're
stack,
not sure
to be
what that
honest.
was.
Yeah.
We're
not.
Greg's
so
special.
confused.
That's what it is.
It was everything.
Guys, we have 7 minutes to go in the show. We have a lot of questions, so we're going to try to get to them right now as people are panicking, trying to set their lineups.
Don't freak out. Freak out.
Jeff, you were just super high on Brandon Cooks. I mean, you're going to take him over Tyreek Hill. It's a season-long PPR. Josh Kinman is asking.
Ooh, two of my favorite players. I would take him over Tyreek Hill this week, though. Like I said, the matchup, I'm surprised more people aren't talking about it. Trey Flowers is like 4th last in Pro Football Focus cornerback ratings right now. Brandon Cooks is one of the top receivers. This is just too good to be true. And then you look how well the Rams offense is playing. I would definitely take Brandon Cooks. I would take him over a lot of players at that range, to be honest.
Would anyone else in this quad box take Tyreek Hill over Brandon Cooks today?
Not a chance.
No,
Okay.
it's
Julian
going to
probably
be
would.
a no from me. A
You don't
no
speak
from
for me,
Doug.
Jeff.
Okay. Guys, Steve, PPR flex, Buck Allen or D.D. Westbrook?
I like D.D. Westbrook a lot in this matchup. I think Allen is definitely getting his chances there. He's been sneaking some of the goal line work. I wonder if he's going to be getting that because Collins fumbled again last week, but I really do like D.D. Westbrook in this matchup.
All right.
Oh, were you going to follow up? Anybody? No? Okay. Cousins or
What's up with him
Stafford?
today?
Hey, listen, dude, I'm also playing injured. Cousins or Stafford for GPP? Julian.
I like Stafford here going up against the Green Bay defense. Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, Golden Tate. We've been talking about these Lions receivers all show, so of course we're going to like Matt Stafford here.
Steve, that means you would be taking Cousins in this situation?
Oh, absolutely.
There you go.
I'm not playing injured either.
Oh, yeah, Steve, let's
You do
go.
look fresh.
Hey, Jeff, Marvin Jones or Corey Davis, PPR?
Oh, God, Marvin Jones for sure. Corey Davis, look, you're just buying at the peak here. It's just a pace-down matchup. It screams pace-down. I mean, Corey Davis is good. He's got the connection. But to think that's just going to keep going and the Titans are going to throw 40 times again this week, I don't think so.
All right, I don't know if this question is a joke or not, but Rosen or Flacco? Let's go, Greg. You take this one.
Oh my God. Are these like how are these?
I will say this: the individual who is asking this on Facebook doesn't even have a profile picture, so it's probably it's probably just like a Russian bot.
What's the screen name? Are the numbers
Emerson's
6-9 in there
burner
somewhere?
account.
So
He's asking
anywho,
for a friend.
yeah. Anywho, Rosen
Help
or
him,
Flacco?
Greg. Help him.
There's anybody else. There's no way that those are the only two options you have to build your team around.
I don't know.
Josh Rosen, there. Next.
Yeah,
Thank
all
you,
right.
Jeff.
Thank
option
you,
here.
Jeff.
Do you have
Always
anything?
go with the younger player. There's more exciting.
Stan wants to know Diggs or Brandon Cooks with Russell Wilson Baldwin stack. What do you think, Julian?
Well, I mean, if you're going with that game, you might as well stick with the game and go with Cooks there. The Minnesota wide receivers are interesting to me. I like them both. I prefer Thielen, but go with Cooks if you're stacking that game.
Yeah, that would make sense, don't you
And
think?
here's another.
That would make sense.
Here's another question that'll just make you vomit. I'll let you take this one, Jeff. Shady or Ivory? Oh my God.
Oh,
Don't even answer. You know what? I just wanted to get your reaction to that. You don't have to answer that. Or you know what? Maybe
Jeff
he
has
really
to
wants to
answer
know. Go
Wait,
ahead.
I had to answer the Flacco or Rosen, but then there's a pass on this one.
I
think Steve is sending these questions in. These are terrible.
It's not a hard question to answer. Just play LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, okay.
So, like, was that a real question, Emerson? I'm a
It
little
was.
confused.
It was.
Okay.
Hey, does anyone think could Trent Taylor work with Goodwin Iffy in San Francisco? Steve?
No.
No.
I know. You know what's funny is the closer we get to kickoff, these questions just get worse and worse.
Yeah.
They really do.
Hey, James Conner or Will Fuller, Julian?
I think you got to go James Conner there, especially since we don't know if Will Fuller's playing. Tougher matchup against the Cowboys. I think that Conner can get a lot of catches in this matchup with the Falcons.
4.
Greg, Ridley Davis or Sanders, non-PPR?
Ridley, Davis, or Sanders. I'm going to go with Sanders there. I think that he is probably going to get the most volume. With Ridley, I'm waiting for the touchdowns to regress. There's no way that all of his catches are going to continue to be touchdowns this year.
Give it to Julio. Stop doing this.
Yeah.
Here's my hot take for the week. Julio Jones scores a touchdown.
Nope, sorry,
Ooh.
dude. Not happening. We all know it. They're in the red zone. Let's take our best player off the field. We do have 2 minutes. Let's get to your slate-approved picks. Go ahead, Julian. You started off. You've had the best show out of everybody.
What? Well, that is correct, Emerson, and I appreciate that. And Melvin Gordon is the slate-approved pick. He's just got too good of a matchup here against the Raiders. He's going to be catching the ball. He's going to be running the ball. He always scores 30 points, and he's going to do it again today.
Jeff, hit me with that slate approved.
Steph Diggs. This is the matchup people dream about. This is it. Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball 50 times. Steph Diggs is going to score 1 million points.
1
Wow, this is
million
like
points.
A million is definitely more than 30.
Guys, that's a lot.
The first Sunday that Jeff has not taken Tevin Coleman as his slate
That's
approved.
not true. I took Tyreek Hill week 1.
Yeah, come on.
Well, I've had a couple slow weeks. Who cares?
Right? Steve, hit us with your slate approved, please.
I mean, I don't know if I want to answer after that Julian comment, but I guess I'll go with Christian McCaffrey. I think he's in a smash spot. He's a PPR monster, so McCaffrey 8,000.
Yeah, wow. Very rude, Emerson. Greg, you know what a slate
Speaking
approved
truths.
is. Hit us with yours.
Yeah, I'm going to go Doug Baldwin for the 1,000th time today. I just think he's too cheap. There's a lot of upside there. I think he's a good cash play. He's a good GPP play. And he's going to be the Seahawks' #1 receiver going forward.
All right.
Big Seahawks guy today.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Another Sunday show in the books. So we're here every weeknight at 6 o'clock. So join us tomorrow or don't. You know, it is totally up to you. But
Yeah,
if
but
you
no, you
don't,
really should watch.
You're wrong, and we don't like you.
Yeah, facts only. We're on the Facebook page.
Twitter.
We broadcast on Twitter now too, so
Yeah.
follow the Sweats
YouTube.
Twitter account. It's new.
Yeah.
Listen,
everything.
we have calzones right off the set, so I'm really hungry and I need.
We got to
food in
wrap
my
this
system.
show. He
Yeah.
needs a calzone.
I'm
Jesse.
done.
He's
I'm
Emerson,
hangry.
and we'll see you later.
Angry.